The city breathes in 1,000 electric sighs, each window a pupil, watching the dark Nova-Quay skyline, stitches itself with light and shadow, as if the horizon were a seam, and someone keeps tugging at it, threading a new hair into the loom. The streets light up in spectral patterns, arcs of sodium glow, a flicker here, a leap there, then fold into something unnameable. A street that exists tomorrow, while the one beside it sticks to today, then vanishes from one moment and reappears in another. People ignore it, almost. They have learned to walk as though the ground under their feet is listening, whether or not the ground cares. On the rooftop of the Weave District's central spire, Leah watches the city react to its own memory. The Weave is a living neural grid, a vast brain in the city's bones, an organism that supports and feeds on human intention. It hums with colic tremors, like a sleeping titan shifting in its sleep. The lights in the lower ward blink in patterns. Leah can read only because she's learned to listen with more than her ears. She's a reality engineer, a title that sounds like a promise of precision, but often feels like a stress fracture in a brittle glass bone. Today, the Weave is misbehaving in a way that makes the word misbehaving feel far too gentle. Ray stands beside her, a silhouette that is as familiar as a memory you're sure you filed away and then found again on a rainy street. He's tall, all lean angles and braced shoulders, with eyes that once burned the color of a stormlight blade and now glow with something half-finished, the way a machine thinks it is done, but isn't. He wears the city's night on him as if it's a second skin, a cloak stitched from risque bravado and rough luck. He has a way of making danger look like a performance, a dance everyone else calls trouble, but he calls logistics. The grid is talking in a tongue I don't fully know, Leah says, not turning to face him yet, her gloved fingers hovering over a console built into the parapet's edge. The console is a promise and a trap, a ring of translucent panels that float in midair. The kind of thing you look at and feel the clock hands inside you shift. The panels show flickers of the city's memory, the choked gasp of a child in an apartment that exists across a seam in time, the soft rustle of a scarf that belongs to a woman who no longer walks the streets, but who left her scent in the air. Around them, the city's hum thickens, like a conversation growing louder in a crowded room. Neural grid, the Weave, has fallen into a panic because of something Leah and Ray's did not anticipate. A fracture that didn't merely tilt a street into tomorrow. It split the present so that two versions of the same time occupy the same physical coordinates and places. And the city cannot sort which is which without causing damage that might cascade into every life in Nova-Quay. Stabilize now, or fetch what's left of yesterday, Ray's says, almost to the city, as if the street lamps themselves were listening and would take his side if he pleads hard enough with their unblinking glass eyes. Leah studies the pattern in the air between them, the Weave's tremor lines like a flock of birds who have learned the shape of a snare. Stable to what end, she asks. Stabilize and we cement the fracture, but that closes the door on any chance of retrieving what's slipped through and maybe trapped in yesterday. Her breath fogs in the cool night. The city's hum vibrates through her bones and makes her feel herself stretch, thread by thread. Along a line that doesn't exist until you believe in it, Ray's lets out a soft laugh that has never traveled well in a city that can hear everything. To retrieve what's slipped. You mean your love, your mother, your own lungs that used to breathe a different future. You're asking me to give up a chance to hoard futures for ourselves, Leah? If there's a way to stitch back what's been torn, we do it now, not later. He touches a small, brutal device at his belt, a tempo knife, a shard of something that hums with the memory of an engine's last breath. Leah doesn't blink. She has learned that blinking here is an act of forgetting. The city's memory is not a friend. It's a patient that can be cured if you keep your hands steady and your pressure even. She breathes out, slow. The people are friends, those who are still in this life and those who were here and have drifted into another form of them, need to be brought back to the same page. The Weave will tolerate 2 lines of time only for a moment. After that moment, reality splits and never relinks. The first time, the weave started to fracture. It was a whisper in a glassware shop that never existed in the morning. The owner's voice persisted after the glass collapsed, and Leah saw a memory of a man she had never met, wearing a hat that belonged to another era, tell a woman she would never see again that the street would remember him. Then the memory faded, but its echo remained in the city's circuitry. That was days ago, and since then the fractures had grown in number and frequency, more like a choir of knives than a single blade. Ray's mouth slides into a sly line. You know what's in those future futures you're chasing. The city is hungry for it. The people will eat time raw if you crack open the right seam. They'll thank you with a new dawn. Leah looks away, toward the glass skyline in the distance. A street glows with a pale greenish hue, an unnatural color that does not belong to any hour of the day, a souvenir of a place where yesterday still shines through a window. It's a lane Leah knows well, a street she used to walk with her sister Nira before the fractures began to pull them apart. Nira is not dead in the ordinary sense. She's a memory that exists only at the edge of a possible past. A possibility Leah clung to with a stubbornness that surprised even her. The city's hum swells and something in the air shifts, a ripple that travels through Leah's fingertips and makes a sound like a child breathing inside a seashell. Then, abruptly, the lights around them dim, drawing into focus a pattern Leah has learned to fear and admire at once. Two parallel grids, two streams of time, converging and diverging at an infinitesimal point in space. If she steps through the point, she might slip into a version of the city that is not theirs. If she doesn't, everyone on both sides of the fracture will be left to watch the moment of their own non-existence. A new sound emerges from the city, a chorus of devices waking up to themselves, alarms, automata, the city's own heartbeat. The weave has chosen sides, and it has chosen Ray's. Stand by, Leah says, not loud, but clear, and the console's projected images pulse like a heartbeat, an old map of the city with red threads tracing where the fractures lie, a second map showing the stitched, those who have been lucky enough to slip into the yesterday street and learn to survive there. The stitched wear the city's old clothes as if they are scavenging outfits in a box of time. Leah. Ray's voice lowers, a coiled snake in his throat. We're running out of time to decide whether we're in this for the long game or a short one that will leave us all with nothing. You know what's at stake. If the weave freezes the fracture, yes, you'll have a city that's safer. If you trust me, we'll coax the fracture open, just enough to pull back what was stolen, and then you'll be free to pick up the rest of your life with no more excuses. The phrase "no more excuses" gnaws at Leah's inside, where she used to keep her courage. She steadies her breath, and when she speaks, it is with the cold precision of someone who has learned to perform accurate surgeries on the delicate membranes of time. What you want is not the city's safety, it's your own gain. Her voice is quiet, but everyone who knows her would hear the thunder behind it. If I do this your way, you'll walk away with futures that aren't yours to own any longer. And you'll have corrupted the weave beyond repair if I do this my way. We risk everything. Our lives, yes, but also the city's future. The weave will remember our choice and judge us for it. Ray's eyes flick to the horizon, where a streak glows with a pale green. Every step of the way is judgment, he says. But aren't we already judged by the past that refuses to stay past? You grew up in the shadows of a city that eats its children's futures. You want something more honest. You want to be seen. A third voice intrudes. A voice Leah didn't expect to hear in this moment. A presence that belongs to a different room in the same building. A room Leah rarely enters because that room belongs to the other you. The voice is calm, almost amused. Two choices, Leah. Stabilize the fracture and lose what makes you who you are now, or risk the entire city to pull back what's been split. The voice belongs to Nira, Leah's sister, but not as Leah has ever heard her. Older, a woman who learned to live between seconds, and who learned to listen to the city's breath. the way Leah knows how to listen to a lover's heartbeat. Nira is not in the room, not in the city's world at present. But Leah can hear her as if she stands beside her. A memory that refuses to stay a memory. Leah's jaw tightens. We've tried to save just the people who matter to us. The weave has never tolerated that. It demands equality or it destroys us all with a quiet insistence. I am not going to be the one to break the city's trust because I wanted a quick fix. Ray's face relaxes into something more dangerous, smiling but with teeth made of winter. Then we'll make a new bargain. You stabilize the weave, and I'll give you back your loved one, no strings attached. Your sister, your partner, whatever you want to call them. Back from yesterday, intact. He leans closer, his breath a hot ghost against Leah's ear. Or you can refuse. And we can see what a broken city becomes when you let time decide who deserves to live and who doesn't. The suggestion is appalling in its simplicity, and Leah knows it. It is exactly what every time smuggler dreams of, leverage. It's the danger she has warned herself would come when you dare to restructure reality with a price that isn't just money, but the price of the world's memory. But the city's response to this threat is not spoken in words. It is felt in the air, a cold pressure that presses at the back of the neck and makes one's teeth hum. The two of them stand on the edge of a line that looks like a thread, but is a corridor. If they step into it, they could be gone forever. Leah's hand reaches toward the console again, then falters. Her mind returns to her sister's voice, to the memory of the last time she held Nira's hand and felt time tilt under their feet. She remembers the night when the weave's tremor had promised something greater than fear and something worse than loss. And it offered an opportunity to have both, to preserve every life and to create a more honest tomorrow by embracing the city's disordered present as part of the same truth. But truths in Nova-Quay are not warm and comforting. They are surgical tools, meant to cut away the living tissue of what we fear to relinquish. The weave's memory glows in Leah's eyes, faint, almost blue, like the glow of a cat's eye in a dim alley. The city's hum slows, then accelerates in a pulse, and the two figures, the engineer and the smuggler, begin to walk toward the edge of the rooftop where the city's live line, the loom, grafts itself into the night. In this city, to save one thing often means to lose something else. Leah knows this. The weave is not a thing you can buy. It is a life you live inside, a body you borrow for a time, and then must return to the earth of existence with the right kind of care. She has learned that the best surgeons trust time as much as they trust steel. A sudden surge of energy runs through the loom, a ripple that seems to originate from the city's very heart. It spreads out through the air, a visible current that curls around their ankles like something alive. The two of them stop. Leah's hands hover near the console, and Ray's, always intelligent enough to sense a moment, becomes still as a statue. The loom's surface blooms, a map of timelines, a network of bright threads that glow with the color of time itself. There are two bright clusters, like twin suns, each connected to the city's memory by a delicate network of filaments. In the center of those clusters sits a black knot and absence, a point where a future was supposed to be, but is no longer. The weave shows them the exact location of the fracture's origin. It isn't a place so much as a decision made in the past that could not be undone without breaking everything else. Two more elements appear in the map. One bright thread carrying the name of a person Leah loves, Nira, or rather, the memory of her, a presence in a street she no longer walks, glowing with a pale, hopeful color. The other thread belongs to Ray's, a signature of his own time hunting, a path that promises wealth, power, and control over moments that should not belong to one man. The city seems to lean toward a verdict that Leah knows will be delivered in the form of a choice. The choice is there in the air, in the map, in the city's own breath. Stabilize now and risk losing Nira's memory forever. Or bend the weave and risk undoing all of time to fetch a single life tangled in the past. Leah's lips press into a line. She steps closer to the loom, and the interior of her own mind becomes a map of every choice she has ever made. The image of her sister's smile sits in her thoughts, clear as a memory you can almost hear. The sound of a streetcar, a rain-slick pavement, the way the fan in her grandmother's kitchen would hum when she was a child, these are all there, as if the city is pressing her to recognize the face of the person she is and the face of the person she could become, if she chooses to become the kind of woman who sacrifices everything for a chance to fix a broken world. Reyes watches the map, then looks at Leah. "You want both," he says softly. "You want to keep your sister and the city and your life. It's a noble dream, Leah, but it won't survive contact with the truth of what you're asking the weave to do. You're asking the city to choose for you, and the city doesn't choose. It becomes what you decide to become." Leah answers with a calm that feels almost cold. "I'm not asking it to choose. I'm asking us to choose, and we'll choose what's hardest, what costs us more, and what has the potential to become something that can live beyond us." She nods toward the loom. The fracture at the origin, the knot, must be undone at its source. The way to do that is to reweave the broken seam, not by closing the wound, but by revealing the second layer of time beneath it. We need to pull the yesterday thread back into today's fabric, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't erase the yesterday threads, that give the city its character. Reyes raises an eyebrow. "That would require you to accept that you are yourself a future that yesterday was waiting for you. You would become the seam's own keeper, and then you'd have to live with what you've stitched." Leah's reply is quiet, almost gentle. "If the future is a thing you must protect, you should be prepared to share it. The weave isn't a weapon, and it isn't a property. It's a life. It's the city's life and our lives within it. If we stitch it properly, the city becomes something else entirely, a common memory in common use, a collective future that belongs to everyone who breathes the air of this place." She takes a breath and holds it. "We stabilize the fracture by letting yesterday and tomorrow learn to sit side by side, not by forcing one to disappear. We do it by reintroducing a principle of time, the idea that memory can be a tool, not a trap. We do it by choosing to trust that the city will remember us if we do not pretend to be its rulers, but its guardians." Reyes is still, listening to the words as if he's hearing a new tune for the first time in a lifetime spent chasing the next score. Finally, he nods and taps the tempo knife against his palm, a rhythm Leah recognizes as a signal they once shared on a different job that would have felt like a poem if it weren't so dangerous. It's a ritual for times when they're about to walk into a trap that knows both their names. "Let's do it your way," he finally says, the words sliding like a blade, but spoken with a rare sincerity. "If you're right, we'll save the city and your sister both. If I'm right, we'll lose the entire world, but keep a memory of what we kept for ourselves." Leah turns toward him fully, and it feels as if the air itself is waiting for her verdict. Her eyes search his face for the last skin of deception, a place she might still hide behind if she was not ready to leap into the unknown. She finds him to be someone who has grown through life by learning to trust the risks that would kill a normal person. The city's hum seems to lean closer, as if begging her to decide. And Leah realizes that this moment itself is one of the many times reality has never forgiven, nor properly celebrated, the ones who choose to define what time means to living beings. She steps to the edge of the loom, as if it's a stage, and she is about to deliver a speech that might be heard by every soul on the city's shoreline. She does not pretend the decision is simple. It cannot be. The weave is not something you learn to work with. It chooses you, and you must choose a path that will make the choice beyond you possible. "Open the knot," she says, and the word itself seems to pull at the fabric of space. The loom responds with a soft electric sigh, and the grid reveals a tiny, almost invisible seam at the knot's center. It is like a scar you didn't notice until a photograph shows it to you, and you realize it's a wound that never healed. Leah's mind becomes a field of knives and threads, each thread a potential alteration of time. She thinks of Nira, of the sister she loves with the stubborn temper that refuses to die, even when the world would have her belief that death ends the story. She also thinks of the past, Leia, the girl who dreamt of becoming more than a lab rabbit in a glassed world. She shakes herself gently, as if waking from a dream that's too fragile to hold. Raises voice, a steadying anchor, asks a final terrible question. Are you ready to become the conduit, Leia, the channel through which all the time in the city will pass? Are you prepared to be the hinge on which every possible future leans? Leia places her palm on the loom's surface, and the city's memory surges in answer, not with words, but with a flood of sensation. A memory of rain on a grandmother's windowsill. A hug from a sister that happened when time was a motherless echo. A kid's laughter that used to echo through a street that no longer exists. A lover's kiss lost in the air just before a fracture's first cry. A moment breaks into two streams, the one that wants to close the fracture, and the other that wants to open a new possibility. A Europe of time, where yesterday and tomorrow live in a shared house. It is not a compromise, it is a redefinition of what time is, a new concept, time as common infrastructure. The loom glows brighter, and the knot at the center of the fracture becomes a thread instead of a clump of darkness. The two streams begin to braid themselves around the thread, like two rivers meeting and deciding to travel on in line. The city's pocket lanes flicker into life. The week-old rain that never quite dried becomes a memory you can step into. The tomorrow streets flicker into a version of yesterday's, and Leia sees the near future's children chasing the memory of a story in which they did not exist yet. It is something like a dream, in which a line of dialogue you haven't yet rehearsed becomes a memory you cannot forget, because it belongs to the future as much as the past. In this moment, Leia feels the self she has been, the careful engineer who has counted every risk, who has learned to speak in the literal terms of physics, and feels a different self emerge from inside her. A parallel self who has always known that the city is a living thing with its own desires, and that those desires are not always kind, but are always honest. This self, which she realizes she has always been, looks at Reyes and says, without words, a sentence only they can hear. We must do this, not for us, but for everyone. The leniency of time Nova-Quay's new term for the unspoken ethic that Leia has learned to live by, reaches out like a thread and ties itself around them. The city breathes again, softer, as if the giant in the street has learned to hold its breath for a moment, so that those who dare to touch the loom can finish their work. The knot dissolves. What remains is a seam, a new seam, a place where yesterday's memory and tomorrow's promise can both nod at the present and say in a single shared voice that this moment is now real, not a dream, and that it is the result of choices made by people who chose to risk themselves for something that is bigger than themselves, the stitched ones, those who had learned to live between times, who wore yesterday like a coat and tomorrow like a watermark, emerge from their hideouts. Blinking at the dawn that never fully arrives, but always promises to, they stand in a circle around Leia, their faces a patchwork of fear, relief, and hope. Some clutch objects they abducted from the future, others simply hold out their hands as if asking for the chance to belong to a future that doesn't erase them. Nira appears, as if stepping out from behind a curtain of memory and light. She's older, not by years, but by the weight of the time she's endured. But she smiles in a way that makes Leia feel that sisterly warmth she has missed since that last evening they shared, in a world that might have existed if the fracture had never happened. She speaks without using words either, a memory rising to her lips that Leia can hear as clearly as if Nira were speaking in the same room. I am here. I am here for you. You made the right choice. Leia cannot help but cry. Not out of fear, but out of a relief so visceral it feels like a body's own sunrise. She steps toward Nira and pulls her into a hug that feels like a second and a first at the same time. The embrace that says, you carry me and I carry you, and because we carry each other, we have the weight of a world to share. Reyes stands at the edge of where the crowd forms, watching the reunion with something both rapt and wary. He does not rush to claim triumph. He is not sure how to feel about a victory that might still be a loss in another season. He lets out a breath and looks at Leah, a man who has played many roles, but who might have found the last one in a place he had not sought. A partner in a risk bigger than any he'd taken before. The weave responds not with light, not with a sound, but with a memory, an echo of something Leah cannot name, a knowing that the city has acquired the right to exist beyond the terms of anyone's plan. It is a sense of relief, the satisfaction of a plan that did not fail entirely, a satisfaction that sometimes feels almost like forgiveness. The city's memory coalesces around them in a soft, lilac-blue glow, like a dawn that promises more dawns to come. The fracturing patterns in the loom fade to a pale suggestion and eventually vanish, as if someone pressed a mute button on a wind instrument. The loom's surface becomes clear, showing the city as it is, quiet, ordinary in some places, and luminous in others, where the memory of yesterday still lingers like an afterimage. The day's first sun, not a real sun, but a glow born of the city's own desire to be seen as alive, rises over the glass towers. The neon signs flicker, then steady, and the city's street corners resume a rhythm that feels almost human again. The air steadies, carrying a scent of rain and something more metallic, time that has finally decided to settle into a gentler pace. Leah looks at her sister, at Reyes, and at the people of Nova-Quay who have learned to survive within the peculiar reality of a city that can bend in the middle of a breath. The night's fear has become morning's hope, and the two of them, Leah and Reyes, stand in the light of a city that now belongs to all of them in a way it hadn't before. "We did not end the world," Leah says softly, though everyone around her can hear the undercurrent of triumph in her voice. "We made it possible for the world to end in a better way, if it must. We gave time a chance to breathe, without losing the memory of what makes us human." Neera smiles with oceanic patience, a mirror of the older Leah that she remembers in childhood. The girl who believed in the possibility of healing, even when the wound's bite was a bright, searing thing. "Time is not the enemy," she says, using Leah's own language back to her. "It's a river that has to learn to bend around the stones of our choices. We chose to fish from the deeper streams, not the shallow ones. We chose to swim in the wider sea." The moment feels sacred for a city that has learned to live with fear as a constant companion, a constant friend, and a constant reminder that nothing in time is free of consequence. And yet it also feels like a celebration, not a triumph of one over another, but a chorus of many voices, all of them telling the same truth. We chose to be responsible for what we can truly change. We chose to risk what we hold dear, and we chose to save the possibility that time could be a shared resource, not a scarce prize. In the days that follow, the city's lights stop flickering with the pain of near destruction and begin to glow with the steady presence of care. The neural grid, the weave, sits inside the city's mind with a gentle glow, a reminder that it is not a tool to be wielded, but a life to be tended. The streets return to their ordinary rhythms, except that the ordinary is now infused with a strange, quiet magic. Beyond the ordinary, there is a new sense of possibility, a future where the city's past and future can coexist in the same breath, where memory is something you hold not to remember what was, but to help make what could be. Leah keeps her distance from the center of the loom, not because she fears its power, but because she has learned that a reality engineer must stay adaptable, must not become the very thing they have vowed to fix. She has learned to listen to time in a way that does not pretend it belongs to any one person, a lesson she will carry to the grave if it comes to that. Reyes does not disappear into the shadows entirely. He becomes a shadow with a name, the man who risked everything, who chose to fight for a cause he believed in, even when the world would have told him to choose easier paths. He remains a partner of sorts, a rare one who has learned to see the weave as something more than a playground, more than a battlefield. he becomes a person who can survive in a reality where time is not property, but responsibility. The city begins to tell its own story again, but now the story is told with new vowels, the vowels of memory and future, of yesterday's promise and tomorrow's hope. The people of the lower ward talk about a festival of time they want to host, a yearly celebration. They want to invite the stitched into the gathering, to tell them that they are not alone and that their stories, the stories of people who had learned to exist between seconds, are not only allowed but celebrated. Leah stands with Nira and Reyes at a balcony that overlooks the neon river, the river that runs through the city like a living vein, a current in which every person's heart can be heard if you listen carefully enough. In the river's glow, Leah's reflection is a little older, a little wiser, but the reflection is not a lie. It's a promise that she will remain forever the kind of person who did not falter when the rescue of a world demanded that she risk becoming something else entirely. A child's voice cuts through her thoughts, a sound that belongs to the city and to no other place. Did you fix it? The child is standing at the edge of a crowd, eyes bright with a closeness to the unknown that only a child can truly understand. Leah smiles and crouches to meet the child's gaze. We did something different, she says. We didn't fix time, we learned how to live with it. The child beams. And Leah feels a surge of tenderness so fierce it could burn away all fear. She knits her fingers into the child's small palm and walks with the child toward the city's heart, the loom room where the weave lives, where all time is a patient. They pass through a corridor of light and memory, where the city's portraits hang on the walls, people Leah has loved, the ones who guided her to this moment, now smiling at her as if they knew she would be the one to do what needed to be done. If you listen closely enough to Nova-Quay, you can hear a chorus of voices that used to be separated by the wind's cunning and the city's fear, now singing in harmony, the voices of time, memory, and possibility. The city seems to breathe again, and it breathes a little different now, as if it has learned to accept its own dual nature with grace rather than suffering. Leah looks up, toward a skyline that has been remade not by force but by consent, the consent of people who chose to be careful with time, because they learned that time's care is the only way to keep every story alive. She takes a long breath, tasting a future that doesn't sting with the ache of loss, but hums with the quiet, stubborn hope that tomorrow can be kind if you allow it to be. The city's light settles into a soft, steady glow, and the neon river carries on its slow, patient current. The festival preparations begin in small ways, a child's kite filled with a thread of memory tied to a lantern, a vendor selling threads of time dyed in the color of harvest, a grandmother teaching a grandchild to listen for the city's heartbeat. It is not a celebration of domination, but of stewardship, an acknowledgement that to live within time is to be responsible for what you borrow from it and what you owe to it. And somewhere beyond the rooftops, a shadow stirs, a shadow that is not a threat, but a memory waiting to be invited back into the present. It is not the old Reyes, nor the silhouette of a future he might have controlled. It is the recognition that the city's weaving is not a weapon, but a relationship, a mutual contract between those who breathe and those who dream. The story Leah told herself when she began this work, a story about saving the world by making it honest with itself, has not ended. It has shifted, grown, and learned to hold more. The city has become something, not less but more, a shared home, a living archive, a future that is less a possession and more a covenant. If you stand on the highest balcony of the Weave District and listen, you can hear the city's breath, not the breath of a machine or a slave to the clock, but the breath of a creature who learns to endure and even love the slow, stubborn, necessary work of being time's custodian. It's a sound Leah might have once mistaken for a threat, but now she knows it as a lullaby, a promise that the day will come again and that the night we fall with a gentler weight. The city's lights, though they flicker from time to time, do so with the knowledge that they are seen. And Leah, standing with her sister and her unlikely partner, understands that what they did was not simply fix something. They reimagined what it means to live with time, not as its master, but as its caretaker, not as a thief of futures, but as a guardian of memories, not as a designer of destinies, but as a participant in the miraculous, stubborn, human project of becoming. The street below them begins to fill with movement, a procession of lives continuing, each one part of a larger story that will never end because time itself has learned to listen, to permit, to forgive, and to hope. A city, in its long, luminous sigh, settles into a cadence that feels almost like a single heartbeat shared by everyone who has ever existed, a rhythm that says, we are here together, and tomorrow, for the first time in a long time, we will not fear it.